If you experience any of those symptoms while playing the saxophone, watch this video until the end and follow the instructions carefully. Your embouchure is getting tired fast. Your low notes are difficult to play. You're out of breath after playing. Your high notes sound thin or are difficult to play. Your sound is not full and projecting. It's difficult for you to play soft notes. Playing the saxophone feels like going to the gym for you.
You're unable to relax while playing. Your long tones are shaking. Your tone is not focused and text core. You're biting your lip when playing.
You can't play in the altismo range.
Did any of those issues sound familiar to you? If so, then let's find out if the cure is to put in another few hundred hours of practicing, or if the simple solution is to adjust your reed strength. But before we go into the discussion of the right reed strength for you, let's cover some basics. What does reed strength mean actually? Well, the strength of a reed on a saxophone is determined by its thickness. Usually the higher the number on a reed, the thicker the reed. It's important to note though that there's no standard system to label reed strength, meaning that a reed number 2 from one brand might be thinner or thicker than a reed from another brand that is also labeled a 2. Generally speaking, the thicker the reed, the harder it is to play. But why don't we play all just really soft reeds then? Isn't it stupid to play harder reeds when they are more difficult to play? That's a great question. At this point, the answer is usually that a harder reed gives you more stability, a darker sound, etc. But I like to look at it differently. A soft reed makes the low notes play easily, but the high notes are more difficult to play. A hard reed, on the other hand, makes it more difficult to play the lower notes, but the higher notes are easier to play. And the goal is to find the reed strength that provides the best balance between those two extremes for you. Let's now take a look at the standard reed strengths that are used for alto and tenor saxophone. Since the tip opening of the mouthpiece plays a big role here too, I will list the reed strengths together with the tip openings. The most common reed strength for alto is 2.5 or 3 combined with a mouthpiece that has a 7 or a 7-star tip opening. For tenor, the average is a number 3 reed combined with a 7 or a 7-star tip opening. Does this match your setup? Let me know in the comments which reed strength and tip openings you're currently playing. But I heard that it's better to play harder reeds, isn't that true? There indeed seems to be a common belief that it is somehow better to play harder reeds. It even sometimes feels like a bit of a competition where saxophone players win who play a 10-star tip opening and a 4 to 5 reed. But is this really the way to go? Let's see what Chris Potter, one of the greatest saxophone players alive, has to say about that. In a very insightful masterclass that he gave in 2015 at the Jamie Ebersold workshop, I put the link here, he mentions that he himself switched from a very hard reed with a very open mouthpiece to a more average setup, meaning a number 3 reed and a 7-star to 8 tip opening. He says about that, I remember in the 90s I used a much more resistant setup, a 9 or a 10 with a number 4 reed. I have no idea how I did that, but it did change a lot. I kind of changed the whole concept, and this was around the time that I was trying to get into what Joe Allard said. I found that I was able to get more expression if I didn't play so hard a setup. I could just be more precise. In a certain way, it's really harder to go down and learn how to blow less hard than it is to just put on a hard reed and just bear through it, because you have to be a little bit more subtle. I think this is a great statement. Often players choose very hard reeds because they can't control a more medium setup. But by choosing a harder reed, a whole bunch of problems arises. Your embouchure is getting tired very fast, you can't play soft notes, the low notes are difficult to play, and so on and so on. Dave Liebman, one of the great saxophone educators and also one of the great saxophone players of our time, agrees with that too. He writes on his website, it seems that starting with students to seasoned pros, a basic mid-array is generally best. This means basically a medium chamber, medium tip opening and a medium strength reed. So if you are one of those players that play very hard reeds, I would really advise you that you try out to go a bit softer. And if you find out that you have to work on your embouchure, your airstream, or other things that are related to your tone production to make that work, you can find a lot of exercises on my channel here. Lucky me, I'm playing a number 2 reed, so I don't have anything to worry about. Well, let's talk about this. If you're just starting out on the saxophone, 1.5 or 2 reed is completely fine. But if you're already playing for a longer time, it is most likely that this is too soft for you. And playing reeds that are too soft is also not really beneficial for you. What I see with my students is that if they play reeds that are too soft, they don't develop the air support they need for a full and projecting saxophone sound. And whereas the low notes might be easy to play, the high notes tend to be squeaky and just don't sound very good. Not to mention the altissimo range that is just very difficult to play with a number 1.5 or 2 reed. So if you've played very soft reeds up until now, I would recommend to you that you go up step by step until you've reached the standard setup that I recommended earlier. Just make sure that you always stay relaxed and that you give yourself enough time to adjust to the changes. Of course, there are also players that play very extreme setups but sound just amazing on it. Mark Turner, for example, plays very hard reeds, and his sound, especially in the altissimo range, comes partially from that. On the other hand, Joe Henderson is just the opposite. He plays a very narrow tip opening and very soft reeds. But these players are absolute masters on the instruments and perfected their playing technique, which allows them to play on such a setup. Okay guys, that's it what I had to say about the topic. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to hit the like button and also click subscribe for future content like this. Thanks for watching and see you next time.